Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. This is the day that the Lord has made, and it is my pleasure to invite you to our session. Thank you for joining us. And as you join us, our trust and hope is that you'll be able to get inspired, to be able to ask yourself, how do I move forward? Now, before we start, let us have a word of prayer so that we may be able to dedicate this session. Father, in the name of Jesus and by the grace of the Spirit, we come before you. We thank you, O Lord, for this day, and we thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to be able to share with your people. Father, whatever is discussed here, may it be by your Spirit and not by our might. May you be able to walk us through this journey. May it be a learning experience and to allow us to be able to share with your people. We pray all this in the mighty name of our Lord Jesus Christ and Savior. Amen. Great people, again, thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for joining us on this session. I change now. Why should I change? The name implies that I need to change now. And that becomes our drive. Because all of us are agents of change. And where do we gather this inspiration from? It's from our good Lord Jesus Christ. So today I challenge you to be able to put your ego aside and focus on, do I need to change? Then, if you do need to change, then it's time to change now. So welcome to this Ignite conversation. The essence of this discussion is to ignite a conversation, not only in your mind, but also possibly in your business, in your organization, and even in the church, in your family. The main reason being, can we start asking ourselves questions? And can we be able to answer these questions? Hence, Ignite. Hoping that and trusting that this discussion will be able to help you be able to navigate through this pandemic. And today, it's all about discussing COVID-19. And our topic is about navigating the new normal. And to be able to share in this very exciting discussion, I have a very lovely panel here before me. And I'll take this opportunity to introduce them. To my immediate left is Annette Mutuku. She's a communications expert, and she's here to join us. And we'll be looking from the perspective of the organization. Annette, welcome.
Thank you, David.
Next to Annette is Pastor Dan Murage, the senior pastor at JCC EASTLANDS, and also a visionary of our program. And we are looking forward to be able to hear from him. Pastor Dan.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Thank you. Next to him is Dr. Andrew, a dentist by profession, and also who runs his own business. Dr. Andrew, karibu sana.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. And to my farthest end is the lovely Salome Gaoni. Salome works within the medical industry, and Salome is also a communications expert. Salome, welcome.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you. So we don't really want to focus a lot on the pandemic and what has happened, but our discussion is more in terms of how do we navigate the new normal. And before maybe I move forward, let me just ask, because some of the statements I get to hear is, I can't wait to go back to normal, or is it the new normal? I don't know. Annette, possibly you can be able to share your thoughts on this.
It's interesting you say that, David. I remember a couple of months when COVID came, I sent an email to a colleague, and there was an out-of-office response that said, "Hello, I am working from home with my young son who is out of school to keep our community safe. Please expect unusually slow response than usual." At first I thought, this is weird. But then when I thought about it later and, reflecting now, in the last 6 months, I've worked from home and I've only been to the office 4 times in the last 6 months. Then I realized this is actually our new normal. So I don't think we are going back to the normal, whatever it was. Things have changed. And so, yeah, we're in the new normal.
We're in the new normal.
Yes.
I hear you. Now, possibly, if I throw the same question to Dr. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Well, one thing about today's living is that, first of all, if you look at conversations that we do for Ignite, this is conversation number 2. The first one we did it in a church full. Right now, we are live on social media. That's the new normal that we are living in. As long as the world is not going to be able to get the vaccine or the cure, we are going to live in this situation. Let me give an example. When HIV was actually discovered, people changed. the new normal changed that time. So right now where we are, it's a new normal because of COVID. And as long as it's going to be existing with us, definitely we have to live with this new normal.
Okay. Currently up to this point, we are in agreement that it is not normal. It's the new normal. And hence our topic of discussion. And at this point, I'd really want to be able to appreciate those who are joining us. I can see Samuel Masharia, Pauline Wawira, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please tag a friend and please share as much as you can. Going back to the discussion, at this point, I'll present this to Pastor Dan. When the first case was actually discovered, this was in December, and this happened in China. And then it started moving and spreading to other countries. So it was not a matter of when or if. It was a matter of when. So were we prepared as Kenya? Were we prepared as the church? What are your thoughts on this?
The truth of the matter is we were not prepared. In the sense, somebody said that when opportunity presents itself, then it's too late to prepare. I think a crisis presented itself and we weren't prepared. If I may actually say, I think we have survived by the grace of God. We've tried to, do the best we can as a country, as a church, but in the real, sense of the matter, we've just sailed through.
Along the way, we were not quite prepared, I would say.
David, can I add something on that?
Please.
From an organizational standpoint, I would like to use the term in quotes. Some organizations were unconsciously prepared. Because when you look at the organizations that have invested in digital technology, the ones that, like, I'll give an example of my organization. From the word go, even before COVID, I could work from home like 2 days in a week. So from a digital standpoint, we were prepared. And so when the pandemic hit and many people were forced to work from home, we already had the infrastructure in place. So in that sense, those organizations that have already sort of invested in that were somehow prepared, even though it was not for COVID. Yeah.
So maybe I can add something.
Please do. Yes.
From a business point of view, especially like myself, who is in a dentistry, a lot of consumables go about to do our business. And so when we had and knew that COVID was existing, and we kind of like stocked up on gloves, masks, but we thought it's going to pass by within a month or two. Let me give an example of a country called Taiwan. During the first time we had SARS virus, severe acute respiratory syndrome, in 2002, I was a student in South Africa at that time, and I heard about that disease. But in a way, we only heard of diseases that affected the Western world. Of course, in Asia, they lost a lot of people, but South Africa, they also were affected. But I never heard of my home country, Kenya, having the same. So I came back with the same backdrop. Of course, SARS virus was declared contained by the World Health Organization back in 2003. So even when I was buying or purchasing my consumables, I came to realize that we were thinking that it's going to happen the same way, that SARS or COVID-19 will only affect the Western world and Asia, and Africa we're going to be kind of spared. But let me say that the church prayed. The church prayed. I remember prayers were conducted, online or not. Even when you are in church, I remember before the directive to close the churches came about, we were basically declaring things against COVID. And we can see where we are today, and I will say it again. Yes, doctors are doing their best in terms of preserving and curing a lot of people. But one thing that has really done it well for us is the grace of God. Thank you.
Appreciate. From what I hear is largely we were not prepared. And possibly the question that now I'd want, and I'll let Salome go at it first, is why? Why were we not prepared?
First, I think crisis is a test of leadership. And so I think during tough times, we have leaders who come forth and display a sense of confidence, like, they can navigate the times. And so I feel, number one, our greatest area of focus would be leaders. How prepared are leaders to communicate peace and reassurance during a challenging time. And as they do that, what reality are they defining? So I feel leadership is number one. But the other thing is, I think the magnitude of the crisis we've had, no one foresaw like lockdown in terms of from county to county, country to country. No one was quite prepared. And I think from my personal experience, I was out of the country. I was locked out. My initial plan was to be out of the country for 7 days. I ended up having 100+ days. So it's not about, I think, just preparing. It's absorbing change as it comes, and then we define a reality that would work for us.
Okay, I hear you. And some of the points that I'm able to pick is in terms of the crisis then gets to define the kind of leader you are. And possibly we'll get to look at that later. If I'm to pick up also, there's an aspect of we didn't foresee, possibly the vision aspect of it. And I'll come back to Pastor Dan at this point and look at it from this perspective. Being the church, being able to support and walk people through some of these things, how would you be able to bring it in terms of why were we not prepared? I don't know what your thoughts would be on that.
I think by nature we are traditionalists.
Okay.
we are very loyal to tradition. If it's working, don't alter it. Just leave it as it is. And that's a challenge that we have because, like many churches, didn't bother to get digital. You know, yeah, and because why? People were coming, and we were able to preach. We were able to meet them one-on-one. So you can imagine now you can't even shake hands. You have to maintain social distance. That altered the old traditional customs that we are used to. So I think we are so loyal to the traditions, and that has killed our creativity, our ability to be seriously men of vision, and that is very, very important. The next thing that I can say is our way to embrace change, which I can say is a challenge that we have now and a lesson to us. Many people don't embrace change. So because digital came, and you know, in one way or another, many organizations, except Annette's and a few others, never embraced the digital, you know, platform. So many people fear change, others reject change, others oppose change. But I think the reason why we were not prepared because our way of embracing change is questionable. Okay. Yes, sir.
Maybe I can add something onto that. From a government point of view, I think the country was prepared because the mitigating factors that were brought in, the closure of schools, the churches, and of course the bars and everything that was actually closed, that actually allowed people to interact very well. In a way, it helped. I saw a research that was done the other day, and actually they're saying that Nairobi peaked in July. So right now we're actually on the down part of the curve. When it comes now to point of business, I would say that we as dentists, for all my own experience, we were not that prepared because most of us actually suffered buying a box of masks at 3,000 Kenya shillings, which goes for 350 shillings. So the minute you start realizing that, yes, on the government side, the mitigating factors were actually prepared. The team, I know a couple of doctors in that team, and they did a good job. Because if you look at what's happened in Africa, of course they're saying that maybe you are underreporting, but it has not really affected us as it is done outside there. So in a way also, let's also appreciate our country and how they were prepared in terms of what was coming in terms of this COVID-19. Okay.
So where we are right now, we can actually agree that part of our tradition has been able to help us walk us through this, and our belief system, that we are able to actually believe and walk through this. Now, let me ask this question. How has this pandemic impacted? And let me go to Annette. From the organizational perspective, how has this impacted?
Let me say wow again. If I look at it from an organization standpoint, and I'm not just talking about business, even non-governmental, one of the, the biggest impact has been around revenue. Now, before COVID, in January, I remember January, February, a lot of organizations already laid out their annual plans. They had targets, how are we expanding businesses? This is what we want to achieve by the end of the year. But then come Feb, March, COVID hit, all those plans were rendered useless, totally useless. So one of the things, and I want to touch a bit on what we were talking about, about were we prepared or not, and then come back to the revenue piece, that what I've seen with organizations is the ability to be agile. Right now, it's either you change or go. There is no, Pastor Dan said, we've always done things like this, so we don't want to change. But right now, you cannot afford to say that. And so I've seen agility in that, yes, revenues have gone down. And I'll give a case like, Kenya Airways. Last week, they were reporting 14.6 billion loss, which is double their loss last year at the same time. Of course, that has a ripple effect on people. A lot of people are either laid off or salary cuts and other benefits go. A ripple effect on profits, of course. Business cannot expand, and environment and other things. When you look at the non-governmental organizations like the NGOs, right now, every donor is only focusing on COVID. So if your NGO is not focusing on COVID related, you guys are not delivering on anything. And so that means, so many of them are closing shop. But what I've seen is the ability for organizations to be agile and look at, yes, this has happened, but how can we change? Are there opportunities that are being presented right now because of this COVID? And a good example is Ethiopia Airlines. If you look at them, they are not in a bad situation like other airlines. And what happened to them is that they converted some of their planes, passenger planes, into cargo. And they were the ones that were moving, healthcare supplies for the Jack Ma Foundation across Africa. So that is being able to say, yes, the situation presents us with lemons only. We cannot just throw them, let's make a lemonade. So yes.
I hear you. Maybe just to... Dr. Andrew, there is a Sonja Lewis from South Africa who says he's tuned in and he's watching and says you're looking sharp.
Thank you.
Let me go to the church, because this is one I trust. The impact must have been felt. Please share.
When COVID came by, I think we were thrown into a season of uncertainty. Yeah, I think in all the years, the church has never encountered a closure where the church doors are not opened. So, and it brought this aspect of, Annette has talked about agility, ability to transition, or how do you handle transition? Because all of a sudden, you can't meet people. All of a sudden, you can't do weddings. And if you do weddings now, it's online. So you don't even know how the groom should kiss the bride with social distance. With a mask on. If it is burial, it is less than 15 people. Yeah, and it has to be done immediately. I think the world has been shaken and the church has not been left behind. So the idea is, how agile are we? How are we able to turn with the things and how things are and be able to still move forward? Allow me to quote a scripture about a man that we know and we respect as a leader by the name Samson. One day he was confronted by 1,000 Philistines. Sounds like a pandemic. From everywhere. And you know what he did? He didn't have a weapon, He didn't have time to prepare himself. He just checked around and saw a jawbone of a donkey, and he killed them. I think now the lesson that we are learning here is that you've got to change with the moments and do whatever you need to do to get the victory. And anybody who's not agile enough, anybody that is not... that is stiff-necked will easily be destroyed. So as a church, we were seriously hit We are still recovering. But I saw pastors who've never been on online, going online. So it worked well.
It worked well. Let me go to Dr. Andrew, and let's look at it from, you're a business owner. You run your own dentist. So kindly share, what was the impact to you as a businessman?
I always say that every time you get into a crisis, you never go back to the same setting that you are. So either you adapt, you become flexible, and allow what is happening to do as Annette said, make lemonade out of it. I'm reminded of a story of a widow in 2 Kings chapter 4. This widow had, the husband was actually in a pastoral school, and he died. The creditor, or should I say COVID, came, and they were here to collect. She was in a crisis. She evaluated her crisis and actually went and see a man of God who directed her on what to do. From that crisis, she became an industrialist. She had an oil business going on. What am I saying? I've interviewed many people, from a caterer to a teacher. I know of a lady called Sarah, Madam Sarah, whose work was actually to make food or to prepare food for a wedding. As our pastor has said, weddings are 15 people. So there's no way she can be able to make money from that. What she do? She morphed, she adapted. Now she's running a school of catering. She started online, then went physical with of course, the social distancing. What am I saying? Crises are there to help us to expand our thinking. If you don't have that thinking, if you're not ready to adapt, and you're not resilient enough, you're going to be buried. Of course, I can say that, yes, there are some people who have made a lot of money from this, and there's people who have lost a lot of money. When it comes to dentistry, the operational costs have gone so high. But what am I doing? I'm now diversifying my products. Long time ago, we never used to stock any toothpaste in the clinic. I'm doing it because people are going to continue brushing their teeth. Hello. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew. Which now, let me go to Salome. And Salome, I'd love for you to share your experiences. Welcome back home. From 7 days to 100 plus days. Definitely, and I'd love for you to look at it from the point of, as an individual. How was this for you?
All right. I think every crisis presents to you a higher level of emotional stress than any other time. You are stressed. You have a moment to review. Am I well grounded? I think for me, what I saw was a reflection of who are my support system. So, and as a leader, I began to think, are we well anchored in our purpose, in our social circles, that when we go through crisis, we can emerge out successfully. And so I think the greatest impact is in terms of stress at a personal level, because you don't know what to hold tomorrow holds. You're hoping and wishing that the airports will open the following day, but that goes 1 week, the following week, and another week, and you sort of lose hope. So I think finding your grounding, and I'm glad that we are in a faith setup, we can talk about being grounded in God and finding God as your anchor, and as such, you can be able to take in what happens around you. In psychology, they call it the holding. It's a level of you containing what's happening around you, interpreting it, and making the very best out of it. So I feel like at an individual level, finding your anchor and holding and charting a path forward for you is a great plus during a crisis. Okay. Yeah.
I hear you, and thank you for sharing. Something that I'd love to put across at this point is there is the acronym VUCA, VUCA. And those who love to determine the times and name them actually are saying that currently we are at a point of VUCA. And they look at VUCA in the sense of the V tends to represent volatility, the U tends to present uncertainty, the C represents complexity, and A represents ambiguity. And where we are today is actually, we've all agreed it's the new normal. We are not going back to normal. So currently, and to review the topic of today, is then how do we navigate this new normal? How are we going to be able to sustain it? And how do we move forward? So if I was to use the same acronym, VUCA, then the question, if I will pose it in Swahili, ni tutavukaje? Na tutaenda mbele namna gani? So at this point, let me come back to Annette. And from your perspective, how do we sustain? What do we need now to do? And how do we go forward?
Thank you, David. VUCA, wow. We talked about being agile earlier, but then now, for us to VUCA, we need also to be resilient. We cannot afford to give up. Yes, we've heard Dr. Andrew talked about organizations that have profited from the pandemic or from the crisis, and others that have made losses. But I'm a big believer in every crisis brings opportunities. And so I think going forward, we just need to sort of sit back and say, this is our new normal. Where do we go next? And I'll give an example. For organizations, for example, the ones, I know that most traditional organizations have never thought about working from home for their employees because you think they are not going to be faithful to deliver. But right now, there are organizations that are coming up and they've realized, actually, you can start a global organization with everyone working from home without having to pay for space, for office space. And they are recruiting young people online. They give you a job. They give you an allowance to set up an office at home. And you work and you report. And everything is virtual. COVID has just made us realize that is a possibility. We have organizations that are coming up with working from home policy that some of you can just be working from home. So what I'm trying to say is that let's be resilient and also realize there are opportunities that we can work with. We don't have to do things the way we were doing before, but what are those opportunities that we are having now? We have global meetings that people have always met online. Last week I saw the Africa Development Bank president being sworn in online. It's never happened before, but it did. We can't wait because we don't know if we are not getting to what normal look like. So my point being, there are opportunities presented. Let's look at that as organizations and also from a personal standpoint and start moving forward with those and investing in such opportunities. Yeah, thank you.
I hear you, Annette, but many will argue organizations are prepared. Organizations know how to do these things. And possibly right now I'll move to Salome. And let's look at it from the individual perspective. Because many will say, organizations, Annette does not know what she's talking about. She needs to come to my house. She needs to see what I go through. What does she mean? So
before Salome goes, can I comment on that?
Please do.
Yes, organizations, they prepare, they strategize, but nobody saw COVID the way it hit us. I mean, look at the numbers. Look at Norfolk. Who knew Norfolk would close down? They were prepared. I'm sure they have some reserve for like Salome said, for some calamity, but it was not to the magnitude. So we can only plan so much as organizations, but not to the cent. Yeah.
I hear you.
Thank you, David. I think one of the things as leaders and as individuals we need to do is to do self-care. It's been reported during this crisis that there is increased number of domestic violence, very unempathetic communication in organization. I actually read a company that fired, quote unquote, or did mass layoff via one Zoom message that lasted less than 1 minute. So it's very unempathetic. And so I think as leaders and as individuals, we need to do self-care. And when I talk about self-care, I'm focusing on our mental, physical, emotional, just balance. How well am I prepared to pass on a message without hurting somebody else, and it's balanced, it's objective, and they can go saying, I know my boss did the very best, or my leader did the very best, or even at a family level, how am I handling my children? Am I, now that they have been home for long, are they eating too much? And my stress is directed to them. So I feel one of the things as this crisis has taught us is that we rarely take care of ourselves. Self-care is a really wanting area for us. And I'm glad there is counseling going on for different cadres of professionals countrywide. But we need to do more from a church level, professionalized counseling, but also at home. Who are our support circles around us? Can they tell us you have overstepped? So I think self-care is an area we really need to focus on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear you. And Dr. Andrew, I see you wanted to add on. Please do.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about what we've been doing. And one thing I always say is that listen to many people, yes. There's a guy called Vusi Tembakwayo from South Africa, a guy I follow very well. And he had 3 points which are modified and I call them Andrew's 5 pointers. And it's clear as A, B, C, D, E. From a self-care or from an individual person to a business to a large organization, the first thing you need to do is actually A, activate your faith. I'm glad you're in a church setting where you can talk about the Bible. If you look at Isaiah 43:19, talks about the Lord making a way where there seems to be none. If you're able as an individual to vest your faith in that, if you're able to go back to your Bible and actually be able to ask the Lord to guide you, you're going to be able to navigate through this crisis. When it comes to the issue of B, belief, and Vusi says, belief precedes ability. Our own Jonathan Kipchoge, he runs up 2 hours in a marathon. Nobody knew he would make it. The first question he was asked is, how did you know you're going to make it? He told us, I just went to the starting line and I believed I'm going to make it. So even when it comes to your own business, your own self-care, your own marriage, because I know even marriages are suffering because of the layoffs, you have to have that belief. If you don't have that belief, you're going to lose it. C stands for clarity. What is your business about? What need, what value are you adding? And the moment you start realizing that, for instance, that lady who's doing a school of catering, she's come to realize there's value in teaching more people about catering. Because we have so many young ladies, even young men, who are coming into that. And they'd want to know how you do it. The other thing I would say is this, when it comes to D, just do it. As Nike says it, just do it. You know, at times we find that you've already thinking about a business plan, but you never thought about it. I know of a teacher who was laid off from a good private school. And when he went home, he also has been saying that I want to open a farm. I want to start farming. Right now here in Nairobi or here in Kenya, the traditional vegetables, or what you call mboga za kienyeji, is where people are going. Now that person is actually running a farm and a greenhouse of mboga za kienyeji. There are trucks and trucks coming to fetch. So just do it. Don't wait until things happen and go wrong for you. The other thing is about efficiency. And Vusi says, you have to be efficient in what you're doing. He gave an example about a company that has 15 salespersons and an individual, as somebody has said about opening a business on Facebook. The individual is so efficient because whatever he has to do, whatever marketing skill he wants to bring about, he's actually be able to do it there efficiently. Unlike this person who has 15 salespersons who have to go and do the homework, come and present to the marketing manager. They have to go sit in a boardroom. So you look at that, you find that your business, your life, your marriage, it has to run efficiently by making the right decisions as quick as possible. A, B, C, D, E. Thank you, David.
Thank you for sharing. At this point, I'd love to encourage. Please feel free to share your questions online, and definitely we'll be able to pose them to the panel. From what I hear is yes, there is a way forward. And there are quite some number of learnings. At this point, let me go to Pastor Dan. And church is when things go bad, this is where we run to. Most of us, when things are not working and we need a shoulder to cry on, lean on, we run to the church. Definitely, yes, there must have been some learning. So what are the learnings as a church we can be able to share?
I think as a church, the first thing that we have learned is that change is inevitable. And we must expect it at every juncture of our journey. And I think during times of crisis, David, is not a very bad time. Because when you look at the Bible says that at the beginning, the earth was formless, was without void. You know, everything was chaotic. But it sounds like pandemic also. You know, nothing is working. Yeah. And the scripture says that God created. So I think if there's a time for all of us, that is institutions, businesses, churches, if there is a time for us to imitate God, it is a time like this. When it's void, it's chaos. And it's time to unleash our creativity. Yeah? What is creativity? Creativity is creating an opportunity in the midst of disorder. In the midst of disorder. And you create an opportunity. So I think it's time for us to really unleash the creativity in us. I'm reminded of a story of someone who lost a coin in their house. But in the house, there was no light. So you know what they did? They went under a street light. And they were checking the coin there. Then somebody, a passerby, came and asked, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I lost my coin and I'm checking it." So the gentleman joined to check the coin under the street light. After 1 hour, he asked the gentleman, "And where exactly did you lose the coin?" He said, "I lost it in the house, but it is here where the light is." In the house, there is no light. I think what this season is teaching us, that there's something in you that you have ignored, but you've gone to the company to look for it because that's where the light is. So it's time to unleash our creativity, begin to check the resources that are within us. Some of us, we have books, and it is during this season you discover you can write a book. In fact, I have several books that are in waiting. All of a sudden, I've discovered that my ministry is reaching out people from, I prayed for people in US, in Canada, everywhere. And so in every crisis, there is a wonderful opportunity if you can change your perception. Yes, sir.
So if my understanding is correct, it means then a crisis can be able to define who you are.
That's right.
If I was to go to organizations, there's something that they're doing right for those organizations that have been able to transition. So what are some of the things that you can be able to share from the organization perspective, Annette, that we can be able to tap into so that we can see if these organizations can be able to sustain and walk through this, then how can we be able to tap into? Possibly you can share a few insights.
So thank you, David. One of them, of course, I talked about digital, and that is the future of organizations. Every organization, any organization that does not go digital, it's going to disappear at some point. And so organizations, both from small businesses to medium to big to larger organizations, we have to be deliberate in terms of putting the infrastructure ready, equipping our staff as far as digital is concerned, because that is the only way to make sure that if something else, another calamity comes, we don't lose business and we are not distracted. Because even though I know organizations like Pastor Dan talked about, churches that took 3 months to get online, they cannot be at the same space as churches that were online way before. So there's that piece around investing in digital. The second piece of it, safety. I know that the way we are talking, yes, we are coming sort of about to flatten the curve, or it feels like we are out of danger. But one of the things that organizations we need to learn is investing in the safety of our employees. And then the issue is, how do we keep the spaces where our people work safe, whether in the field, whether you are working on the front line or it's in the office. And that is something that COVID has sort of revealed, that many organizations are not deliberate when it comes to safety. How safe is your workplace? Can you invest in that? Can you even have people that are in charge of that? Because the employees are the most important asset. I know traditionally we say customer is king, but without employees, you're not going to get revenue or profits to be able to serve your customers better. So I'll talk about digital and safety for now. David, thank you.
Maybe I can add to that. From a dental point of view, I remember myself and my partner, we sat down and we were looking at the numbers, because we were forced to close clinics, and yet we have about 13 nurses, we have about 15 doctors working for us, and we're looking at now, how do you go about laying them off? But as we sat in that office, we told ourselves that let's look at what we have in the bank. Let's see what we've been saving. So the first thing I'll actually tell and share with my ladies and gentlemen is that always prepare for tomorrow. You know, people talk about the pension fund, they talk about so many things, we talk about savings. Don't live as if it's only tomorrow that's coming. Save up, because that's exactly what save does. Going forward, we sat down with the nurses, because our nurses are paid they're on a salary. Our doctors on commission. So basically meaning on commission, work done, work paid. No work, no pay. But our nurses are on a monthly wage, and we had to look money for them. I called them and I told them we need to meet and talk about this. So what I did is I sold that idea that I said here, after learning from what Vusi was saying. I gave them that belief that we are going to come out of this, and we're going to come out clearly. So I'll come in and say, as Annette and Salome, what they do, communication. I clearly communicated with my workers. As she said very well, if I don't have a nurse, I cannot work. I can work but to a certain extent. My employee, my nurse is my biggest asset. And the best way I can be able to do it is actually communicate with her and be able to let her know where we're going through. I've heard of businesses that actually came and brought their bank slip, or should I say bank statement, to the nurses to actually show them, we can only get this money for you. And that's good, because it would be very bad that I'm making the money, I'm doing well, and yet I'm telling a lady to go home and pay rent with what? So communication and that being human to everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So communication creates the belief, but the key word that stands out is it all depends on the leader. And let me bring this to you, Salome. Being a communication expert, let me put you in the perspective of a home. And one of the biggest challenges that we have been having, and also part of a question is, I'm not used to, the husbands are not used to spending time with the wives and the children. What do we talk about? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, nothing else to talk. So how can we be able to take forward a communication? Possibly your thoughts on it.
Wow. How do we build our communication at home level? I think one of the things I would point out is when you're presented with a new circumstance, we can always find things to count our blessings on. And I find like starting at a place of giving thanks would be, what do I have? I have a wife, or I have a husband, I have children. Like that would be a great basis. We are here now. What do we do with this time? So we have this time. How do we make the best use of it? And then I think just realizing our strengths. And I just want to focus on, if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of others. Every leader, if I'm not able to handle the pressure of the present times, I'm unable to translate the same to others. So it means, by and large, we will have failed organizations, failed homes. So I think for at home level, if we can audit our strengths and build on that, maybe discover I like to cook and say, can I try a meal? I think just finding ways of rediscovering ourselves, because during lockdown time, you didn't have an opportunity to go out. So it's just rediscovering ourselves, I would say. Maybe a new meal, a book, maybe even reading together would be something people can do together to build that level of communication. Because I think not unless we find a common space and a common thing to run us forward, it would be hard to communicate. Yeah.
David, can I add on that?
Please.
I like what Salome is saying, and I think it's also planning together and saying, we have 12 hours, what do we do? There's personal time, there is family time, and agree on what is it, possible to do together. And instead of fighting and wondering, how am I going to spend the next 30 minutes with my husband? Why can't we work together? So as a family, just coming together and understanding, how can we come up with a weekly plan, a daily plan that integrates both your personal needs and the rest of the family needs. I think it is also helping. Yeah.
I have a burning one there, because yesterday I had the honor of meeting the feeder director, Anne Wambeti. And she told me she's dealing with so many cases of domestic violence. And what we agreed and actually came to a conclusion is that before he gets there, there's clear signs something's going to happen in his house. A lady called Jasmine Skulak, a pastor in America, she preached something about making the best out of a bad situation. At this time, in the house, and there are those signs that are showing that sooner or later, my husband might unleash a slap on me. It's a matter of evaluating. You evaluate the situation. You come true to what is happening in your life. But one thing I've come to realize, and this is funny because I'm married, and of course, at days you'll disagree. But one thing I can ask our listeners is this: ask for help. Ask for help. So many people are being killed, or should I say they're being beaten, and they have the capacity of asking for help. One slap today, tomorrow will be 2 punches. Ask for help before it gets to 2 punches. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to build on that, and I trust I'll bring this to Pastor Dan, as I said, the church, and in your role as senior pastor, many people get to run to you to share, and many people will open up. And right now, I'd really love for you to speak to the leader, the man of the house. How do I walk through this? How do I get out of being able to be in my house and spend time with my family without being worried of what shall we discuss? How can I be able to open up some of the things like there's no money, what do we do? Possibly based on the many discussions I trust you've been having, how would you be able to walk me through as a man?
One of the challenge, thank you, David. One of the challenge that we have as men is that we don't know how to share. So we are closed up, you know. We don't know how to get vulnerable. Where you can call your fellow man and just become vulnerable. And the few that are sometimes attempt to be vulnerable, others, they do it the wrong way because they become vulnerable on the lap of Delilah. Mm-hmm. And you know what will happen after that. That's why we have so many affairs. Actually, most of the affairs is a sign of a broken man that is looking for some level of massage in their spirit, in their soul. They look somebody to understand them, to mama them, and they end up in the wrong hands. And maybe at home, the man is just commanded to produce some money to pay bills. So what I can say is, several times I've had men come to me. I've had even fathers that are older than me, 55, 60 years, and they'll sit there and say, Pastor Dan, you're like my son, but allow me to talk to you as a pastor you are. And I would listen to them, and they'll talk, they'll cry. Sometimes I'll embrace them, and in the embrace, that is before COVID, they would cry and cry and cry, and immediately the healing would happen. So what I can say is, as men, let's take the challenge. Look for a fellow man. Even if what you're going through, the other man is still going through the same. You'll be surprised that even me as a pastor, I've had my own battles. I've had times where I've gone to check a pastor friend. We've sat there for hours just talking about the challenges of ministry, the realities of marriage as a minister. So even though another man looks stronger, you'll be surprised they are getting some support system somewhere. Embrace vulnerability. We all need help. Whether you are the very top leader of the country or the least of them all. We are human beings. We have emotional needs. We get hurt. Our wives sometimes are not understanding us. And we must admit that COVID has come with a strong level of stress, especially to the men or the support system of the home. So my word to all the men is, be vulnerable. Yeah, we all are fighting this thing. Come, let's talk. Talk about your sexuality. You'll be surprised. You're talking to someone who had the same battle. Somebody helped them through it, and the issue will be solved. Sometimes you won't get an answer, but an issue shared is like half solved. Yeah, and so what I can say to the men, please come out, let's talk.
David, can I add
Please
to what
do,
Pastor
please
Dan has
do.
from an organization standpoint? So there is the emotional piece of it, and what has happened, as much as initially we enjoyed so much working from home with our children, at some point the balancing act starts playing tricks. And you realize that, going down, a month, 2 months, sort of gets, psychologically, draining. And you realize that people actually working from home, you're putting also too much time. You're not going to traffic, so you're probably spending more time working, and then you have to balance with your crying, 2-year-old or 1-year-old. And what some of the organizations are doing is providing counseling sessions for their employees, whether through their medical, if you have medical cover, either through that or Amani counseling centers, or there are organizations out there that know how to deal with such, because the work-life balance right now has really been challenged. Before we were saying we are spending so much time at work, yet now we have been brought to work, we are realizing it's too much. So that counseling is very important. The second piece of it is that the people leaders, what most people call managers, what are you doing with your teams? How are you ensuring psychologically your teams are okay? So checking in, I've seen people having what they call virtual coffees. They are not per se taking the coffee, or you're taking from the other side of the screen, and I'm taking mine from the other side of the screen. But just when they call, and that would be like once a week, you just want to not discuss work with your team members. You just want to know, how are you doing? How is your son? How is your book coming? How is school? To just make sure that psychologically they are okay, but also they can have someone to talk to when the need arises, because this is, it's nothing like we've dealt with before. Yeah.
Maybe I can add something to what our pastor said about a man being vulnerable. There's a great man called Pastor Simon Bevy, and he has got this program, or should I say an organization called Transform Nation. And this is for the men, actually. You are there. I wish I can call out names, but this is what happens. All men have to understand that if you don't take initiative, if you don't take that initiative to go ask for help, like Annette is talking about counseling, what Pastor is talking about, coming and ask and actually crying, you're going to lose it. At this time of the crisis, my brother, take the initiative. And he uses actually the hand when it comes to how we describe man enough. Take initiative, because with this term, like myself being a dentist, if I'm not going to have this term of mine here, I cannot be able to work with these 4 hands. So take the initiative as a man. And if you need to be helped, if you need to go for counseling, go for it. He also talks about leading. He talks about living responsibly. This finger is always the one which points along. You would have done, you have done, you have done. So if you're able to do that to yourself, live responsibly, my brother, I call you out. The other thing let's talk about is leading sacrificially. If I do like this, you'll see there's a finger here. It's the longest, but actually it's in between. It's sandwiched, like they have sandwiched our pastor here. But it's leading sacrificially. As a family member, as a family man, you have to live in a life that your family, your wife, and your children, so to say, can be able to see that there's a way you are sacrificing for them. Second last, the ring finger. You can see I have a ring on me here. He talks about loving faithfully. And you find that loving faithfully comes from your children to your wife. I know sometimes if you look at from a business point of view, we are kind of sometimes married to our jobs. Because without our jobs, all of a sudden we go haywire. So from a family point of view, make sure that you are loving that family. Last but not least, the small finger. There is so much, but what example are you living out? Because this is about living our legacy. If I were to pick up my hand and start beating my wife, and my son is there, what kind of legacy am I showing this kid? So men, 5 things.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew. Actually, there was a question I was going to pose to you based on a viewer, but I trust that viewer has been answered. Salome, earlier we had talked about self-care.
Yes.
And at this point, I'd really want for you possibly to share a bit more. When you talk about self-care, how do I go about it as a leader? And when you go about it, let's look at leaders as all of us, because all of us lead in our different capacity. Whether you're a father, whether you're a leader in a church, whether you are a mother in the house, in whichever capacity. A driver in a matatu is the leader of that vehicle. So self-care, how?
All right, self-care. I've become an advocate for self-care because I feel like we don't take care of ourselves so that we are able to steer the ship of tomorrow to its rightful destination, and hopefully we are able to get to 2030 while we are all together and all of us are happy. And so the first thing is just starting to review ourselves, like audit ourselves. What makes me happy? If I'm not happy about something, what would be where do I turn to bring a happiness feeling? Some people it's walking, some people it's eating. I think it's all of us to discover what makes me happy. Writing, like those who love to journal, it helps you have a perspective of what has made me unhappy, how can I rectify this situation, and what can I do tomorrow so that it doesn't happen again. So I would advocate for self-reflection and audit of things that help me regain energy after I have dispensed it in a quote-unquote a negative situation. But that said and done, the things we can do together. I'm glad that in some Kenyan organizations, I've heard about what they're calling happy hour. Now that everyone is working remotely, they have every Friday between 2 to 4, and they just call it happy hour. You come online and say, what have you done that has made you happy this week? And so it's interesting, it's meant to be 2 hours, but I've heard that organization, they're taking it up to 6 p.m. Some have learned how to knit new sweaters. I mean, people have found things that bring some sense of and level of joy that helps them to steer for tomorrow. And so finding things we can do, that would be a great plus. And that said and done, I think also just asking people around you, what can we do together to navigate this situation, out of this situation? When I was away, I found other groups of other Kenyans who are stuck in different areas. So like Dr. Andrew and Pastor Dan have said, finding other people in similar situation can help us feel, oh, I'm not alone, actually. And that really elevates that heaviness that I'm in this alone. So finding other circles of similar people in similar circumstances really is a great deal.
Okay. I hear you. And one of our viewers is really excited about the happy hour. And what they're posing is it possible for me to have a happy hour in my house with the family? Possibly you can share a bit about happy hour. What do you mean? Because for others, in a different perspective, happy hour presents an extra bottle or two or something, or a cheaper price. So let's review happy hour in a family setting. And I'll pose the same question to Pastor Dan. So maybe he'll think about it as Salome you share. Happy hour.
So happy hour, I think we can do it at a family level. I remember when I finally got a flight to come home, we were just 3 of us in the same house. But I promise you, we decided we want to do special dinner and just celebrate that I'm coming home. And we agreed, we are in the house, we will dress for the dinner. And so it was a white and black affair. So you look for the white and black, you model and say, does this look okay? Does this not look okay? By the time you're having dinner, you're like, wow, this is the best thing that happened. And so I think we can recreate small circumstances at home that brings a happiness amongst us. Yeah, and I think one of my nieces really loves selfies. She dresses for selfies. So find ways of how to just capitalize on things that brings happiness. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It's things we can do within our reach.
Awesome. Pastor Dan, and possibly let's remove the tag, Pastor. I've seen there's a wedding ring, so definitely a husband. Happy hour. How would your happy hour be like? Let's try and imagine it.
Now, the Bible says that joy is medicine to the bones. COVID has come with sicknesses beyond respiratory. So what I would say is, I think it's for every one of us to see what makes you happy. If it's a comedy, a clean comedy, if you love driving, get a buddy, drive out. It's our responsibility to be happy. Mm-hmm. And there's a cloud of darkness in the entire world. If you don't pierce through it, the darkness will overwhelm you. So I think this happy hour is based on individuals. Others, they love playing dart, Others is pool table. Others is just cycling. Others is taking a walk, Others is swimming. I think we just have to come to that place where we admit that we need some level of medicine some recreation, but so that we can be able to breathe out of this suffocation of the issues in our time. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate. Let me go to Dr. Andrew, because a question that has been posed is, you talked about there's a system you set up for yourself. And he's wondering, how can he be able to go about doing the same for himself? And when you mentioned about what you are able to transform and morph from what you learned from Vusi, from South Africa, please.
Well, like I said earlier on, this time it's like 2019 was a straight road. We were doing so well. I remember even when it came to 31st of 2019, and there are so many prophecies about double doors, double anointing, so many things. So we're looking forward to that. But unfortunately, as I would want to compare it to MotoGP, the Formula One of them do this. If I can say do this for those guys in South Africa and where else, they understand when I talk about MotoGPs. And this is something I even heard from Vusi. What I'm saying is this: look for information out there. I've said about Vusi Tembako. There are so many others. There's a preaching that is done from Tuesday to Friday by our own man of God here. Listen to those teachings. That is how you're going to evaluate your situation and come up with your own system. Myself, I was able to sit back and say, wow, my business is going down. I was doing so very well. What's going to happen out of this? And when I said about the MotoGP, I look at it like when they are racing, they say the fastest driver or the ones who wins the races are the ones who are able to maneuver in the corners. And how you maneuver in the corner of COVID-19 is what is going to give you a good exit speed for you to be able to do a good straight line speed. So from there, I look at 2020 as a small bend. Reflect, look back. As a family, do the same. From a business point of view, what things have you been doing which are not working for you? Like when it comes to my business, efficiently, how am I buying materials? Can I be able to go to China? And actually, let me be honest with you. I know of many dentists who are now buying things from China. I actually got to learn about a lady called Dr. Kate Maundu. She buys her things from Dubai. And she buys in bulk. What am I doing now? I'm doing the same thing. So it's about listening out there of what is pertinent to your business or pertinent to what is your need. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to Annette and a question that has been posed. This is the new normal. What next?
Interesting. You know, when I think about it, I'm thinking about 2021, or is it 2022? In Kenya, we have this habit of saying every end of election, you know, a 5-year term, we say we are not going to bring that leader back on. And then the next year we do the same thing. And I think we sort of selective memory or amnesia, we forget. And so going forward, I think from what we've been discussing, there are so many lessons that we've learned from COVID. Lessons that are telling us, one, you know, you've not been efficient as an organization. You've not been planning well in that we don't have a fund that covers you in the period of pandemic. As an employee, you know, you've not been managing your time well. There are so many lessons. So going forward, for me, one is, what are the lessons have we learned? And we are not speaking like the pandemic is over, but we are in a space where we are saying, you know, going forward, but what have we learned? What can we take in? And what do we need to let go as organizations? If working from home has eventually become so good, we don't have to go back to what was there before. Let's continue with the path that is now working, and it's working for employees and customers at the same time. So for me, it's the lessons, pausing to take the lessons, and forging forward to a situation where we plan deliberately, not going back and not making the same mistakes that we made prior to COVID. Yeah.
Okay. So what do we need to let go and what do we need to embrace?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I bring the same question to Pastor Dan, what are some of the things that possibly we need to let go as a church? And when I'm referring to church, I'm looking at when we gather together And I'm also looking at when I'm church as an individual in my relationship with God. So what do I need to let go? And possibly what do I need to do now moving forward?
Number one, we need to stop being very sensitive, because I think COVID has taught us we need each other. Don't drop your support system, at whatever reason. Even those who are having issues in their marriage, my word to you is don't drop your marriage. You'll be surprised. That woman, you need her a lot. And that man, you need him a lot. If I can give my example, several times we've had meetings with the church leaders asking ourselves, what should we do? What should we do? If we say, like the program we have, Pastor Dan Live, it came from a team. Actually, I may look like I'm shining. But you'll be surprised. Several ideas are not even mine. Because I have a support system that I ran to ask them, guys, this is what is happening. I remember us coming up with a program of calling everyone, trying to reach as many people, call them, ask them, how are you doing? A program of having some food drive, to help some families, support some families. As a church, we had something put aside to support the people. All this came because of the support system. So what I can say, number one, some people are easily offended and they drop their support system. But in this life, you need people to be with you. So drop that sensitivity, drop the pain of the heart. Some of us, we've hurt each other during this season because maybe you expected David to call you and he was dealing with something, or he got overwhelmed, never checked on you, and you're offended. Drop it. We actually need each other. The pastor needs the people. The government needs the people. The wife needs the husband. The people needs the pastor. We need each other. And I think we need to just drop that sensitivity and pain and offense. Yes, sir.
I hear you. Dr. Andrew, I can see very eager. Please go ahead.
Well, for me, I will say this, that change is inevitable. And the only permanent thing in life is change. Embrace the change. I'll give an example with dentistry. Mid-1980s, with the diagnosis of HIV, the American Dental Association, which we base all our decisions on when it comes to medical care, directed that all dentists, all hygienists, all their nurses should wear masks and gloves. Of course, people are not embracing that change. Today, I'm wearing a mask in my clinic because of HIV. So what am I saying? Yes, COVID has brought many changes. Embrace those changes, diversify, morph into something which is different. Unfortunately, yes, it may be expensive for you to come to a dental clinic. But with God, all things are possible.
Let me take the same question to Salome.
What next?
What next?
I feel like we have an opportunity to forge authentic paths at an individual level. Based on the time of lockdown, we've had time to reflect. Why am I here? What's my purpose? And even at an organizational level, are we doing what we set out to do? And are we still on the same path? So I feel like it's a time to authentically live our purposes at an individual level and at organizational levels. And then putting people first. I think tough times don't last forever. They will pass. But when all is said and done, what did I do that would help me retain the people that are close to me and the people that matter? Even with a lack of accessibility to them, either by virtue of county lockdowns, do I still have measures I have put in place to continue my ties with people that matter? And even at an organizational point of view, have I been empathetic in my communication so that even when this is over, I can still have friends and we can do greater things tomorrow and be a blessing to others?
If I was to put all your comments at this point, what you've shared, from what I'm getting is we are coming out better.
Definitely.
We are coming out better. And as we move towards possibly the end of the session, is how will I sustain this? Because definitely yes, this is the way forward. I've taken up the challenge, but now, how do I ensure I sustain it? Possibly just to quickly go around and see how shall we sustain this? And it's free, and anyone can actually jump in at this particular point. Yes, Pastor Dan.
I also want to say that this season we have been numbed. We no longer fear like we used to fear. Something has gone out of us, which is positive, because so many of us feared losing jobs. Now we have lost jobs, and we're still eating. You know, we're still surviving. Now it's time to release our fears and spread our wings, because some of us, we've had a false sense of job security, and that has been ruffled now. It's been rattled. Yeah, and they have postponed their capacity to open businesses. They have postponed their visions because of that job security. I think now what we need to embrace is the perception that in every crisis, there is something positive in it. And instead of focusing on our failures, we focus on the lessons, and we focus on what we can make out of it. So one of the things that I'm excited is because our fears have been taken away. I was talking to some people, and I talked to a few gentlemen that have been to the prison. I've been to community prison, industrial area, and I told them, actually, I think you have an advantage more than me. I really fear prisons. But you, in that area, your fear has been killed. So looks like we are stronger as people, and we can navigate now through life. We can even be versatile. You can open a business without fearing, because you failed. Failure naps you against fear and gives you some form of courage to be very daring.
Thank you. I appreciate. Maybe back to the viewers. A lot has been said. A lot has been shared. And the points that have been shared, for me, what would be important for you to be able to appreciate is, this is the time for you to take the next steps. As we said, this is all about igniting the conversations in your mind and in your environment. How you go about it now depends on you. But from what we've been able to get from the panel is that this is us. This is who we are. The fear is out. And we can actually be able to walk through this journey and become better. We are much better. And if we've been able to walk through this and journey through this, then if God is for us, who can be against us? Let me come back to the panel. And at this point, as we wrap up, I'll start with Salome. Your final thoughts and possibly a call to action. Please.
Final thoughts. I think it's very important for us as individuals and as leaders to take care of ourselves. And so my question to every viewer and everyone following us is, how well are you taking care of yourself? Because tomorrow needs you, and we would be glad to have you. So let's take care of ourselves. So if you can outline 5 ways of how you're taking care of yourself, so that tomorrow you are agile, you're resilient, you are up to task, and you are strong, that would be amazing.
Here, Dr. Andrew?
For me, I would say that we have seen firms failing, like Nokia.